Well, as you know, my name is Rachael Bennett. I am running in District 5 for County Commissioner. And my history here, I came to St. Augustine. I went to University of Florida, so I spent some time in Georgia after that. I came back to Florida in 2001 and went to work for the county under Rosemary Yeoman as the Assistant Zoning Manager. And from Rosemary, I learned a love of the county and a love of understanding, and she was an amazing person. She knew everything about the county and knew everybody, and working under her was quite an experience. I learned everything about the regulations, the comprehensive plan, the land development code at that time, and learned also a lot about the different areas of the county and kind of the character of those areas. From there, I went to work for England, Timms & Miller, which is an engineering firm based in Jacksonville. They work in the Tri-County area. Actually, they work kind of all over in Northeast Florida. But I was a specialist in St. Johns County. I did some work for clients in Duval, but I really specialized in St. Johns County, mostly because most of their clients found St. Johns County so difficult to deal with, to work in, to kind of go through the review process. I was a senior planner with them, but I spent a lot of time with the engineers as well and learned about stormwater management and transportation infrastructure. And England, Timms & Miller taught me to think on a regional scale. So Rosemary taught me the human scale, the particulars of each person that comes in is important. ETM taught me to think on a regional scale. When they design a road, they don't just design a little piece of road. They think about everything for hundreds of miles. And that was an interesting scale to think on, because it gave me kind of the flip side of just the human scale. Putting them together, you start to begin to form a holistic view of people and their environment. By the way, my education is a Bachelor of Landscape Architecture. So that's where I spent my years from '81 until 2001 when I came here, 20 years as a landscape architect. So I've done the county work, I've done England, Timms & Miller. From England, Timms & Miller, when I was with them as a senior planner, I worked with the Hudson companies in titling a very large project they had called Silverleaf, 7,000 acres in the center of the county. And that involved a lot of cat herding, because I was in charge of getting all of the answers, all of the information from all of the consultants for the DRI review process and publishing that, that very large document and getting it to all the agencies, collecting all the responses, sending them the questions out to the appropriate consultants and so on. And that exposed me to attorneys, soil scientists, transportation planners, archaeologists, ecologists, financial guys, just a world of people that it was a lot of fun and a lot of very, very bright people. And what it really showed me is there's so much that goes into something. A lot of people see a land plan and they think that's all that's involved in it, but it's not. There are transportation considerations, there are financial considerations, archaeological. And so it gave me the perspective that every decision you make has a lot of knowledge that has to go into any decision. You can't just make a decision without understanding a broad range of things, especially when you're dealing with land use. So we went through the entitlement process. It was a 2-year process. It was very interesting, and the consensus building, the ability to work with people that are tops in their fields and are sure that nobody else knows as much as they do was really interesting. It allowed me to learn how to work with large groups, build consensus, reach goals, in a timely manner, and it was fascinating. And it also brought me through the regulatory process as an applicant instead of as a public servant. So after the project was entitled, the Hudson companies offered me a position with their company to manage the project. That's when the downturn came. At the time I joined Hudson, there were 15 people working for them. when I left Hudson in January, there was me. Because of the economy, you know, they cut back and cut back and cut back. So I gradually took on...
January of this year?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I gradually took on everybody else's work. And what I especially did for them that no one else did is I kind of am a database geek. I like databases. So I brought everything into databases, all their permits, all their properties. I mapped them. I started analyzing ad valorem property tax on all the property holdings and getting everything categorized the way it should. So I worked with the property appraisers and the tax collectors and found, you know, that it was a much better relationship than I thought it would be. Duval, Clay, St. John's. I found that if I presented them with good, solid information, they felt much more willing to discuss things with me and negotiate. And so I learned that if your information, you can't make stuff up and you can't pretend, but if what you are presenting is true, is real, and is reasonable, you have a much higher chance of success in what you seek, what goal you seek. So I had been wanting for a long time to run for county commission. I also came to a point in my life right now where I feel like I have finally learned enough to be a good county commissioner. It's a position of trust, and it's not something that you just do just because you want to. I have 10 years experience in what county commissioners do, and it's taken 10 years of that training for me to really feel like now I know enough. So I went to David Hudson and I said, you know, I'd like to do this. Being the only employee and handle everything was, you know, was a big decision. At that time, he agreed to allow me to become a consultant to the company. So I no longer work for him. I have my own office in St. Augustine. I don't drive to Jacksonville anymore, which I'm really happy about. And made a split with the company, which was good. It was good now. So now I gave him almost a year's notice, which I feel is enough notice to give anybody. You know that, you know, in 1 year there's a possibility that I will no longer be available for you. So until then, I will continue to be a consultant. A lot of people have asked me about my association with developers, and I find that kind of interesting because everyone's so happy about economic development. And it's like, well, the second word of that is development. So how can you hate developers and love economic development? I'm really proud to have been associated with those people because those are the people that are going to help heal our economy and bring our jobs back. I have a good relationship with county staff. I have a good relationship with DOT and Water Management District. I have a good relationship with the people in my field. And so my feeling is that in order for all of us to work together, it's going to take someone who understands all the languages, because let's face it, each of us speaks a little bit different language. We all speak English, but it means a little bit different thing to one person than it does to another. So those are what I bring to the table. A wide range of experience, 10 years of experience with all the different agencies that are involved, and a real love for the county. You know, I've been all about St. Johns County for 10 years, and I love it here. And I would like to now start giving what I have, offering what I have to the people of St. Johns County, and that's why I'm running for county commission. It's been an interesting process. I've never done it before. It's kind of eye-opening. But I also have to say it's been very rewarding. I've met so many fabulous people. You know, you meet people and you don't realize the great things that they're doing on their own individual level. But something like this gives you the opportunity to go everywhere and to meet everyone and to talk to them about what they're doing. You find that everybody is doing these tiny little positive things, and it will all add up. You know, I haven't talked to anyone yet who's angry or, you know, negative or anything. And my response has been so positive and so good and so warm that I'm really encouraged about the future of our county. I really am. So that's me, and that's why I'm running. And
wait till after you're elected.
That's what everyone says.
Let me start with a question that has come up with every county commission candidate we've interviewed, and that's the millage rate increase that the commission did a year or two ago. Would you have supported it or not?
No, I wouldn't have. There are some people that say, well, we raised the millage rate, but everyone paid less in tax. And that's true. Not everyone, but a lot of people did. But the point is that millage rate is now at a certain level, and everyone's market values and assessed values have been plummeting. Once those values start coming back up to where they should be, probably not the 2006 levels, but truly where they should be, those people's taxes are going to go way up because that millage rate has been set. And that's not going to change. So as their value goes back up, their taxes will go up. So, and millage rates don't typically go down. You know, it's sort of like once you set it at this level, that's where it is. So as our economy heals, it's actually going to cost people more. Now, I think that the county does a very good job with the money that they have, but I do think that instead of increasing millage, the proper thing would have been to do what the private sector had to do, and that's look where we can cut. It may not be easy, it may not be fun, it may hurt, but you know, all of us out in the private sector have had to do that. Like I said, there were 15 people when I started in 2006. Then there was one, because that's what the company could support. And everyone has seen that. So I think that the government should have aligned themselves more closely with the condition of the private sector and said, what is everyone else doing?
I just point out that the millage rate does go up. It also does come down. I think the last time it went down was 2007. Using the business argument that things would be cut, what would your priorities be in cutting?
Well, that's a difficult question for me to answer as an outsider. Now, I did go through the budget when the staff came and presented the budget to Wanchek, you know, in that sort of small meeting, not the Board of County Commissioner hearings, but in the small meeting. I went there and I listened. I don't think that you can just wave your hand and say, I would cut this. You know, there is no magic wand. But I will tell you that as I went around and spoke to people, I spoke to a new department head of the county. When he took over, he started reviewing his department's budget. He found that he had people sitting on mowers, cutting grass, that were making $37 an hour. And he said to himself, gee, this just doesn't seem like the most economical use of my budget money. He found if he contracted that out to a private firm, he saved the county $350,000 a year. That's just one tiny, tiny little example. So I know that there are more. And that's $350 in salary. That's not benefits and retirement and so on. So that's not the overhead, the invisible overhead that right now Jacksonville is reeling under. And he also made the point that not everything is appropriate to bid out to private companies. There are some things, economy of scale, that is better for his department to do. But I do think that the county can or should look at what they do, and is it in the best interest of the taxpayers for them to provide certain services that they provide, like having someone cut the grass for $37 an hour.
I want that job.
Sitting on the mower, not walking.
The county is very sensitive to the criticisms it's received that it's not open for business, not friendly for business. Wanchek and also at least one of the incumbents has said that they've gone out of their way to work to change that image. But have they? Are we friendly? Are we open for business and using the sort of catchphrase of the day?
Well, I will say this. I've talked to some people recently, as yesterday, who have gotten some incentives from the Board of County Commissioners and said they were welcomed with open arms. And I do think that Mr. Wanchek is doing a lot. But I will say that until you've actually been through the process, you just can't imagine what it's like for the common business person. Now, you know, Walmart, a Lowe's, a D.R. Horton, something like that coming in, they're going to be welcomed with open arms. But a little guy wanting to open a store, you know, that would employ 5 people, or expand his shop that might employ 2 more people, what they face is phenomenal. And I know it because I was both on the regulatory side saying, okay, these are your regulations, and I was only one of 15 departments. I think until you've been through the process and until you really know every one of your regulations, you can't possibly say that you're business friendly, because it's not a friendly process because it's so burdensome and onerous. I think that conceptually they're business friendly and they're open for business. Plus it's an election year, and the incumbents like saying, we brought in this business and we brought in that business. But truly, when you get right down to the nitty-gritty, it's a very, very cumbersome process.
Okay, as a commissioner, what would you change?
There are a few things I would change. Staff has been going through the Land Development Code and making changes. But I think that there is a lot in there that could still be changed to make it better. And it takes knowing what's hooked to what in the Land Development Code, as well as the comprehensive plan, to make any change at all. I'll just give you a for instance. Even though underdrains have been used under roadways in Jacksonville for 100 years, okay, St. Johns County is now thinking that maybe they don't want to accept underdrains. The implication of that is that the roads now have to be 3 feet higher. The implication of that is now the houses have to be 2 feet higher than the roads, which means if your roads are filled 3 feet, where your houses are is filled 5 feet. How many trees are going to be left on any site? And how many borrow pits are we going to dig in this county? Only because they don't want under drains under a road. Now it seems to me like that's a very, very serious consequence and should be studied very carefully before it becomes just a requirement in the Land Development Code. And I think sometimes staff gets a little bit too focused on their own area of expertise and doesn't see that big picture, that regional picture, that, you know, subdivision. Do people really want every tree to be cut down and 5 feet of fill to be brought in just because staff doesn't have confidence in under drains? So and that, like I said, that's a small thing. That's one regulation. That would just be one paragraph in a land development code that's like this. So there are some things like that.
A candidate in another county commission race, not yours, is raising as an issue the Turnbull PUD, in which the county commission voted 4-1 to oppose. It was 112,000 square feet of commercial space and 600 residential units. It would be located west of Interstate 95 off Route 16. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, I am.
Would you have voted for it or against it?
Well, here's the thing about Turnbull PUD, and it's a little bit of a sensitive issue. Turnbull PUD was about to be turned back to the bank. Mm-hmm. So generally, an applicant is given approval based on what they do. Approving the Turnbull PUD would have tied up concurrency, would have put entitlement on the books that was just phantom entitlement because the bank would have owned it. Would I have voted for it? I wouldn't have considered it a true project. Mm-hmm.
Okay, on your website you talk about, as you mentioned earlier, economic development, the second word's development. You also mentioned on there that if you're going to develop, say, an industrial commercial space, you're also going to need homes to support that industrial commercial space. And you were here in 2006, so you know that there was a vigorous debate in the community over, well, I'm going to shut up my phone off now. There was a vigorous debate in the community about the 70,000 homes approved for construction. People said, whoa, some people said, whoa, enough's enough. And the big debate was with Bruce McGuire and Karen Stern was saying, hey, it's their property, it's their right to do it. And Bruce never voted against one, and Karen only at the end voted against a couple. But it was a big debate. And right now that debate has faded away because there's no construction. But it will return the day the construction returns. How do you balance those competing interests? Because people on both sides, you know, have heartfelt issues on, views on that.
Well, the interesting thing about that is the projects that they were debating and that were causing such consternation among some people are the projects that right now have us #1 in the region in building permits. So what everyone hated back then, now they love. Isn't it funny how time changes everything?
So what projects are those? Nocatee?
The projects, Nocatee, Durban, Aberdeen, Rivertown.
Okay.
Those are the projects that are bringing in the building permits. That's what's putting people back to work in St. Johns County right now. And those are the very projects that everyone pointed their fingers and said they're just bowing down to the big developers and they're over, you know, they're over entitling and so on. From the time you entitle a project until the time it begins construction is years. And until the time it's built out, 10, 15, look at World Golf Village. 10, 15, 20 years. They're still building out. So when you say that there are 70,000 homes entitled, well, that may be true, but that's for the next 20 years. And the other thing is, people do have the right to use their property. Now, how they use it is what's subject to review by county staff and depending on the level of development, state level staff, and the other agencies, the Water Management District, DOT, and so on. But it is interesting to me that the developments that started the whole "we hate developers" movement are the ones that now have our economy beginning once again.
Getting the ratio, everyone talks about the ratio, it's about 11% industrial commercial in the county. To get that up to a level that some have argued 20–25% would mean that we'd have to be building industrial space at a lot faster rate, a much faster rate than we are doing residential. One, do you think that's a reasonable assumption to get to that level of about 20% or more? And how's the county going to achieve that?
I do think it's reasonable. I don't think it's going to happen overnight. One thing I learned with the Hudson companies is he thought in 15 to 20 year increments. He didn't think in 2 to 5 year increments. So when you're talking about getting that level, I think we need it for a healthy tax base. I do think we need that mix. Or right now, too much burden is put on homeowners to support the tax base. So we do need that, and I do think it will happen, because what generally happens is it's kind of like the wake of a boat, and as a boat moves forward, it compresses the water in front of it, you know, and as growth moves, the density kind of accumulates in front of it, and that's where everyone becomes interested. Jacksonville has its own set of issues right now, and what that's doing is it's pressing growth out into other directions. And a lot of that growth is coming here. The schools in Jacksonville are making companies want to relocate down here so their employees can have their kids go to good schools. You know, there are a lot of things that are encouraging now, a lot of demographics, you know, and more than just our desire to have business here. There are a lot of other factors at play that are encouraging businesses to come to St. Johns County. And I do think we'll get that mix. I think we have some financial impediments that are slowing it down. I think our concurrency system is based on false assumptions. I'm not sure that its basis for analysis is sound.
Well, we'll go, why don't you go and explain what you mean by that, and then we'll go into impact fees.
Okay. Okay. I was talking to the manager of one of the banking institutions here. And they're about to build a branch bank in an area that is already well populated and has other commercial development. They're having to do something like $300,000 in road improvements. Between the impact fees and the concurrency, it's costing them about $300,000 because the analysis says that all these people are going to be using the bank, so they're going to generate all this traffic. But the point is, those people are there. That's why you build a branch bank where you build it, because the people are already driving by. You're not generating new trips. All you're doing is taking advantage of the trips that are already going by you. So the way our concurrency system is based right now, it's as if each use is existing in isolation, and there's nobody else already there, and everyone, the only people that are going to come there are people that are going to come as a unique trip. Now, it does allow pass-by use and some other things, so you know there are formulas to take care of some of that. But I do think we should look a lot more carefully at our behavior, at the behavior of our purchasers and our, excuse me, the people that use commercial services. Because they don't get in the car and go to the bank and then go home, and then get in the car and go to the grocery store that's right next to the bank, and then go home, and then get in the car and go to the Home Depot that's right. You know, they get in the car and they do all three at once. So that's what I mean when I say, you know, and of course I'm not a traffic engineer, and there's a whole lot more to it than this. But I just know that I think it needs a big rethinking.
Okay, impact fees, a controversial issue?
Impact fees. It is a controversial issue, and a lot of people say, how can we pay for infrastructure if we don't charge impact fees? Okay, you have a piece of property and it's vacant. So the ad valorem tax is whatever it is. But theoretically, the demand on services is zero. Okay? Now, you put a commercial building there. The ad valorem value goes way up. You know, plus you have sales tax income. You have a lot of value to the county from that development. Okay, that ad valorem is from that increases from then to 50 years from now. Okay, now you look at, say you're a person that wants to start a business. If I come to you and I say, okay, you can start your business, but before you do it, you have to pay me 3 years worth of the value you bring up front before you can even start. How can you do that before you've made the money? That's what, to me, that's what impact fees do. They say before you even begin business, you owe us 3 years worth of something. I'm not in favor of impact fees. I've never been in favor of impact fees.
So if there's the liability, so if they go away, how do you make up that revenue?
The increase in the ad valorem property tax is going to be phenomenal, and like I said, there's a lag. There's a 3-year lag.
Okay, but you're talking about impact fees for industrial commercial. They're also on houses.
Yes, and for a house, for people nowadays, okay, I'm talking impact fee moratorium. I'm not saying, you know, repeal them, because I think we need to approach something like this cautiously and in steps. For most homeowners, you can either pay your impact fee or you can have a kitchen.
I did both.
Okay, but you know what I'm saying? We're in a healing economy here.
I get what you say, but the argument against it is how are you going to pay for the schools? How are you going to pay for the roads?
Well, now the school impact fee is something completely different, and the Board of County Commissioners doesn't really have any jurisdiction over the school impact fee, or wisely they've stepped away from that. And that's a whole different ball of wax, but that's not something that I would have any jurisdiction over. It's something I understand very slightly, and our school system is phenomenal, even though the cost to people is high. I can't speak to school impact fees. All I can speak to is the other impact fees.
Okay.
Let me come back to,
Okay.
I've got a couple of mine.
Okay.
Every candidate, I believe, for the commission talks about how they think we ought to develop business, new development versus commercial development. Yeah. I'll go back to that in a minute. Tell me about how you approach development of business and adding jobs. That's to almost a word that everyone says my goal is to grow business, grow jobs in the county.
Yeah,
how do you do that?
It's the buzzword. It is the buzzword.
Sounds pretty good though, doesn't it?
And it is, because let's face it, we do need it. It is our need, and it's our most critical need, and it's our most obvious need, because without a job you can't buy groceries, and that just, you know, it tumbles downhill, the economic impact. But government can't grow jobs. What government can do is create an environment that's conducive to people bringing jobs in, or not conducive to bringing jobs in. My point is that we should, again, develop a system that is conducive to people wanting to come here.
What would that look like?
Back in 2001, when I was first working for the county, there was a maxim that was handed down to staff, and it was the warm and fuzzy. And we were under direction that everyone that walked through that door, our job was to help them get where they were going within the limits of our regulation. No bending the regulations, but our job was to help them get to the finish line, and to be warm and fuzzy doing it. And we all joked about it. But you know what? It was a whole different atmosphere. And employee morale was high in the county. Everything, you know, it sounded so silly, and at first I was like, warm and fuzzy. But you know, and we all kept like poking each other, now you're not being warm and fuzzy. But what that did is it really kept everyone aware of how are we interacting with the public that walks through these doors, with every public. We don't know if they're a millionaire going to bring Google here, or if they're someone that wants to build a 7-Eleven. We don't know when they walk through here. But everyone we meet, we should do the warm and fuzzy, because they're here, what they're trying to do is bring us value. So what's not to love about that? As long as we know we're adhering to the regulations, what's not to love about it?
But the implication is that we're not being warm and fuzzy now? Mike Wanchek might not agree with that.
Mike does a great job. Mike does do a great job. But I've been out talking to a lot of people, and they would probably not agree that the county's being warm and fuzzy. Most people that I talk to now, and I haven't had to go through the regulatory process for a little while, but the people I talk to say, all we hear is, you can't. You can't do that because. You can't do that because. And that's kind of disheartening. You know, it is.
I wanted to ask another question. Another candidate talked about the reduction and virtual elimination of impact fees that cost, I think it was Polk County, that said it cost them $6 million, and they had to turn around and go do that. You've talked about the increase in taxation, of the values of the ad valorem would more than cover the impact, so that the county, I'm assuming, would take on the role of expanding the infrastructure. Is that how I understand what you said, basically?
Well, let me ask you this. If a road costs $1 million a mile to build, and a house pays, let's just say $3,000 impact fee, how many houses does it take to build a mile of road?
I can do the math.
So do impact fees really pay for infrastructure?
Well, $1 million a mile for a road, that's a wide road.
It's a wide road.
It would not
But
be.
those are the kind of roads that are having to be built. Because if you're building a subdivision, you have to build the road anyway. The developer has to build the road, or you can't plant the houses, can't plant the lots, and you can't sell them.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, the roads that are having to be built are the wider roads, or expanding the roads.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and $1 million, that's a loose and fast number. And that might be a 2006 number. It's probably much less now. But my point is, do impact fees really pay for infrastructure development?
Well,
I don't know the answer to that, but you're supposed to be answering the question.
I'm sorry. I'm not supposed to be asking. I'm supposed to be answering. But this is some of why I'm not, you know, Clay County has put theirs on moratorium. And I don't see Clay County going out of business.
Right, and,
Now,
and,
they're
Duval,
different.
and Duval handles it a different way as well, but there are still fees involved.
Right.
I guess my question is, there's got to be something.
Mm-hmm.
So if you know, the impact fees are trying to anticipate them in advance, the ad valorem that comes later after the development is a lagging thing that comes. So in the meantime, the county's on the hook for that and hope it goes well.
Yeah, the day that company opens, it's gonna need firefighters, cops, sewage, roads. And it's not like they can wait till this company pays its ad valorem down the line, and it probably won't be enough for.
And I'm not
But
contesting it.
on
I'm
the
just
other
trying to
hand,
understand
every
better.
time a business opens, they don't build another fire station. And they don't add another fireman. Because the fire station is there.
it's my understanding that the way the impact fees work is that if the company is like going to build another McDonald's, they pay it. Because they're not creating, they're creating jobs, but not necessarily the jobs that the county is seeking. But if a company is coming in that's creating the kind of jobs that they want, say D.R. Horton up in the Northwest, even though they're already here, but in a case like that, they would get, and I forget what it's actually called, but they basically don't have to pay their impact fees because they get it back. They pay once and they get it back through the back door.
Each incentive is a little bit different, and I have not been privy to any of the negotiations for those incentives. They are performance-based.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, and in order to even qualify to apply for that, you have to meet certain guidelines that are set up by, you know, the Chamber of Commerce, the Economic Development folks, and, you know, and so that's true. The larger ones are often qualify for these economic incentives and don't pay the impact fee, because the theory being the quality that they're, or the value that they bring to the county exceeds, you know, the impact fee. But scale, you know, do 100 people use less fire than 5 people?
There is a tipping point, and I think we all agree with that. Just when that tipping
So,
point is
yeah.
it the new
Well,
McDonald's?
to get out of the weeds, let me stop,
Okay.
put on the brakes, change direction.
Okay.
On your website, you talk about smart government.
Mm-hmm.
And that's your term, and you have a great little chart there. I think it's pretty cool. Would you talk about that? Would you explain your view of that?
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to say there are a lot of people attacking me for that phrase because they say Agenda 21 is the same thing as smart government. And Agenda 21, the Tea Party is very concerned about that because they're concerned it's taking away the rights of property owners and so on. Agenda 21 is about smart growth. It's not about smart government. Now, growth and government both start with a G, but they're very different things. So mine is smart government. By that I mean, okay, we've done business this way up until now. Well, someone moved our cheese. You know, the economy dropped. Our cheese got moved. Are we going to be smart and think of a new way to do things, or are we going to keep going like we've always been and then wonder why things aren't working right? Planning ahead, planning on a regional scale is one of the things that's very different, because let's face it, up until now, we've all been kind of country counties, you know, I mean, but now with the growth and with the traveling and with commerce the way it is, with the port opening up, I mean, we're becoming regions, and all of a sudden what happens in China can affect, you know, us in St. Augustine a lot more directly than it ever could before. So we have to start thinking regionally. We have to be smart about our decisions and not just say, okay, well, we're going to make this decision. Okay, step 2, what does that mean? And then what does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean? That's approaching things from a smart viewpoint. Common sense can take you to the point where you say, okay, common sense tells me that there are these 3 things that are probably going to be involved. Smart takes you to, okay, what are the implications of this one? What are the implications of this one? What are the implications of this one? So because of our economy and because we're all starting to become so intermeshed, we have to be a lot more analytical and a lot smarter about the decisions that we make, and the people making those decisions have to have a broader range of knowledge upon which to draw so that they can make informed decisions. Because it's complicated anymore, It's not like it used to be. I mean, even just the 10 years that I've been in it, I've seen a tremendous change in the complexity of the decision-making process and how it affects things both short-term and long-term, and it's the long-term that we really have to think about.
Let me ask a question related to that. On your chart, and you talk about the long-term view, particularly in one that jumped out, because we've talked about the privatization of functions, or what I've talked about in government functions. Sometimes government does things that they're not really good at, but and they privatize those. And one is nonprofit providers. And in the last conversation, the county contracts with a lot of charitable agencies to provide.
Yes, it does.
These nonprofits to provide services rather than the county providing that.
Yes.
Is that what you're talking about here?
I'm talking about several things. The county does contract with them. It also does support certain of them. And I'm proud that they do that. I think it's critical. I think often it takes the dedication of nonprofit people to keep something going that otherwise couldn't, because let's face it, a lot of times the only reason is their heart is 100% in it. It's not because they're being paid to do something. So, but I don't really see that as privatizing. Let me give you another example, okay? I try to.
Well, your website you talk about partnering. So partnering under economic, and then this is social, but I see the two kind of intermingling. I was just asking if that is kind of your vision.
Yeah. For instance, Habitat. Habitat is providing housing for people that couldn't otherwise do it. Therefore, St. Johns County doesn't have to build housing projects or whatever they're called now. So the housing is being provided by a nonprofit, but St. Johns County is partnering with Habitat in a lot of ways. So that partnering is a really good thing to do. In some cases, just flat sending it to a private sector company is a better way to handle it. But the partnering is also a really good way to get things done.
Okay. Margaret?
Well, you took 3 of my questions, so I'm going to go right in on this one.
Okay.
Back up more on this social services and partnering. The agencies, by and large, and I have been covering these agencies off and on since '97, do not see these as partnerships. They see these as contracts. Several years ago, a county commissioner went after them and said it was corporate welfare to give to these agencies any money. And
let me guess which commissioner.
Okay, well, we're not going to talk about that.
Give you a couple minutes.
And 3 of the agency heads visited with me and said, these are contracts for services. And I called them partnerships, and they said no. In the loose sense, they were partnerships, but not in the physical sense of funding. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do. I do.
It was in the 3 agencies, you can guess which ones they were, but the most vocal was Seniors Council on Aging. Kathy. And she spent 45 minutes, I think she was teaching the other 2 as she went along, plus me, why it was so important to talk the right, to say it right, and to say that it was a contract for services. And so I guess what I'm getting at is where do you see those contracts for services going in the future? Because they have had now, I think this is the 4th year or 5th year of flat funding,
Yeah.
and they claim their expenses are going up,
Yes.
and their service need is going up.
Yes.
So,
And that's true.
yeah.
But on the other hand, they're no different than every person walking up and down the street
Sure.
wondering how they're going to make their house payment.
And that's true. I would agree with that.
Yeah. I think let's just stick with Council on Aging, because let's face it, they do a magnificent job of providing a critical service. And Kathy, bless her heart, in 10 years has made it.
Oh, I would agree.
It's been phenomenal.
I don't think anybody could say otherwise.
What someone can do with 10 years dedication, and look what we've got now. In my heart, I still see it as partnering, because we still recognize the value.
Right.
So it's not a true partnership, but it is saying we recognize you, we respect you, we are willing to fund you.
Right. But when you talk to her, we need more money to maintain these services. And then when she really gets frustrated, she says, if we weren't doing it,
Who would be?
who would be? Because the county can't afford to do what we do.
That's right.
So that's her argument for upping that 1.3 million a year, that 30 or 40 of them split or something.
Well, like I said, it's a difficult time, and it's a difficult time for everybody. And the fact that they are providing a critical service, families feeding their children are providing a critical service as well. And families that are having to pay their medical costs out of their own pocket because they can't afford health insurance are also providing critical services. So we do it on individual scales, on personal scales, and we do it on larger scales. But we're all very challenged at this time. And I'm glad that they get the funding that they do. And I'm not doubting that they need more. I'm not doubting that their need is increasing, because people are aging. More people are aging. More people that are aging are coming to this area because it's such a great place to live. And costs are going up. But we're all in the same boat.
And people's investments went down. And so now those people are turning to COA for Meals on Wheels and things like that they would have never thought to have asked for. Let me ask you, Rachel, about other services, like in reviewing the budget, recreation, healthcare, roads, bridges. Obviously, roads and bridges probably get more out of impact fees than recreation and healthcare would at all. I know for a while recreation was getting it from parks. But do you think there's a time when the county needs to be looking at sliding scale fees for using these, for user fees, not just being able to walk in and get it for minimal?
I think that, that's what we're looking at. That's what everyone's looking at right now, in every direction. The idea of toll roads. The people who use them are the people that pay for them, because they're the people that use them. They're the people that benefit. If you want to go to the movies, you pay for your ticket. I don't pay for your ticket to go to the movies. So in a way, a user fee makes a lot of sense. Now, it's just one more burden on the taxpayer, which is why everyone is so hesitant to go to it. And, again, I think that our recreation system is probably partnered with the school system on what brings so many families here, because there is so much for the kids to do that's good for them, and a healthy and safe alternative to other activities. So I don't know, but there is going to come a time when we're going to have to we're all going to have to just rethink everything, because it's unsustainable. The way we do things now is where's Jacksonville going to get $77 million to put into the retirement fund? Yeah. So, we have to ask ourselves the same thing. We need to provide, but at what point are we providing so much that we can't provide anything anymore? At what point are we going to collapse?
That's a good point. Yeah.
And we have to plan way in advance. So because once you start to collapse, it happens quickly. It's
which brings up strategic planning.
yes, that's right.
Yes, one more quick question, if I could. On your website, you talk about protecting access to waterways, ocean and river.
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
Well, we have some really, really great assets here with the ocean. How many places can you go and park your car and walk to the ocean?
Right, not many.
Not many. Now,
Less-
we're residents,
less.
and we know, the little places you can go. If you come here from Minnesota, and you've never been here before, how are you going to get to the ocean? Same with the river. Where can we build marinas anymore? Because you can't get to the water because of all the regulations. You can't do anything.
Or the property. Right.
So these are our assets, these are our gems. If you can't get to them, if you don't know about them, you won't protect them, you won't love them. We have to have access, our children have to have access to see how wonderful they are, how beautiful they are, how we need to protect them for the future. And you won't do that if you can't get there.
I just want to ask one more question. You're running against Alan Kelso and Ken Bryan. The voters are going to have to decide among the three of you.
Yes.
Why should they vote for you over those two people?
You really want to get me in some hot water, don't you?
Only you can do that.
Okay, we'll take it one at a time. Alan Kelso is a very nice gentleman, and he's well spoken. He has been a preacher, and he has that ability to get the feel good preacher thing going. He was running for county commission, then he decided, well, no, I don't want to run for county commission, I'll run for Bill Proctor's seat, and got soundly defeated. Now he's back for county commission, but he doesn't know anything about county regulations. He doesn't even know that CDDs are not regulated by the Board of County Commissioners. It's frightening to me that someone that knows nothing about county government and the land development regulations in this county may become a county commissioner. It's frightening. Okay? Ken is a very astute politician. He knows that this is an election year, and for at least a year, he's been very polite and very even sometimes accessible. But for the first 2.5 years, he was insulting to people from the podium. He refused to meet with people. He was inaccessible. And I don't think he has the county's best interests at heart. A lot of people pass around this YouTube that is of Ken speaking and talking how great it is to be a Democrat. And that's okay, I mean, he decided to switch, and I even heard him say, the only reason I switched to, I'm a Democrat, the only reason I switched to Republican is because only Republicans get elected. Okay, it's bad enough to trick the voters like that. But what's frightening to me on that video, and it's available on YouTube, is he says on the video, there are 3 of us who have a plan to take control of the county. And you'll remember that one of those commissioners went to jail. The fact that someone would videotape themselves saying, there are 3 of us who have a plan to take control of the county, is also frightening to me. And to give him a chance another 4 years to perfect that control is not something I want St. Johns County to go through. I would like the last vestige of that dark period to be removed from our government and from our history, truly.
And you get the last word.
The last word? Well, I'm sorry this hour went so fast. You guys have been asking great questions. Actually, I've been enjoying these, the interviews because the questions are good. They really make me solidify. You know what you think and you know what you believe, but when you're asked questions, you hear something from a different viewpoint, and it's really great. And I just want to say I appreciate you taking this time to ask me all these great questions, and help the county, help the voters of the county determine who they want to represent them. It's a position of trust. When you vote for a county commissioner, you're giving someone a lot of control over your personal life. It's a position of trust that you're putting someone into. I think that all the voters should do a lot of homework on the other candidates. See what there is out there. See if they're solid, see if their claims are true.